Hello crochet crafters. Today I'm going to give you a little different twist on a granny square blanket, because instead of creating a bunch of granny squares, you're just going to keep going with the same granny square until you get the blanket of your size of choice. So go ahead and get your yarn onto your crochet hook. Now this is, use whatever crochet hook you want, use whatever size yarn you want for your blanket. It's really not an exact science. We're not creating amigurumi animals or anything like that, so you can use whatever, if you want a thick yarn, thin yarn, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and chain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And the reason I do that is that that's going to be the middle of my blanket, the very center location. And I'm going to go back into that first chain I created, and I'm going to slip stitch. So if you can slip stitch right through there. Now to make a granny square, to start it out, we need 8 sets of whatever type of granny square sides we want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my first double crochet. And I'm going to create 3 of those. So that's pulling it through once and twice. I'm kind of going slow in case you don't know how to do a double crochet. You wrap it around and you pull it through. We're not working into those loops. We're using this circle chain as our foundation to working our granny squares. So I'm pulling it through the first 2. And then I'm pulling it through the second 2, and I'm going to do 3 of these. And then I'm going to chain 1. And then I'm going to do 3 more granny. These are going to be a really nice little granny square, and it's all double crochets that we're doing. So we're doing 3 double crochets, and then we're chaining 1. But the reason I did the 8 chain is because we're going to be doing 8 of these. So we've done 2. We're going to chain 1, and you can push those aside. A lot of projects, so you can put those 2 just like that. And we're going to do 8 sets of this, 3 double crochets, and then chain 1. So this is my 3rd set. So I went a little slow on the double crochets, but now we're going to kind of move it along. And we're going to chain 1 after every 3. So I've got 3. Three double crochets again. I haven't been worrying about that tail. We'll take care of that tail in a minute. And then chain 1. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to push that aside like that. And we need to do 8. So I have 8 sets of 3 double crochets in the chain 1. So that's 5 and a chain 1. So this is my 6th set of 3 double crochets. And a chain 1. So we need to do 2 more sets. I'm pushing that across. And a chain 1. And when you get to the end of the last number 8 of the 3 sets of double crochets, make sure you chain 1, because we started out with just the double crochet. So count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I've got 8 sets. I chained 1, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to slip stitch into that first double crochet to close it up the circle. Now, there was between the 3 double crochets, you chained 1 in between each one, right? So what you have to remember is you can't just start doing 3 more in the middle of this set. You have to get to one of those chain ones, and then we're going to do 2 more of those 3 sets. So this is a little bit of a hard concept to understand when you're starting your granny square blanket, because you just need to kind of like shimmy over to this space, but you can't just go in that chain 1 space. So you're still in between these 3. So I am actually just slip stitching. So it's kind of what I call it a shadow, because you're not really making any stitch there. You're not creating any stitch. You're just slip stitching till you get over to that chain 1 space. So hopefully that made sense. So we need to start our granny square blanket in that chain 1 space. So we're going to do 3 double crochets, just like we did before, folks, and a chain 1. And then we're going to do 3 more in that same chain 1 space. So you're at the first chain 1 space that you did, and you're going to do 3 more sets, and then you're going to chain 1. Now, when you get to the next one, you will know that you will note that you have how many spaces left. 1 more chain 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5, 6. So in that next one, it's just going to be 1 set of double crochets, 3 double crochets. And the reason being is you're creating corners here. So this set of 2 right here created this corner. This next one is not going to be a corner. So when you work into it, you're just going to do 3 double crochets. And then a chain 1. So then find that other space, that chain 1 space. And now you're doing a corner again. So when you create a corner, you have to do 2 sets of 3 double crochets. So we'll do chain 1, and within that, we're still going to do a corner. So you've created your corners right there. So what I wanted to tell you now is make sure this next one, you always chain 1, and this next one is not a corner. So we're just going to do 3 double crochets, because what we're doing right now is we're creating our corners in order to make our granny square blanket, and then we're chaining 1 in between. So the next one will be a corner. So we're going to do 2 sets of 3 again. And a lot of people will make small granny squares, and then they either sew them together or stitch them together or crochet them together. But I have found it to be really fun to just swap colors and just continue with the same granny square until I get the blanket of my size. So creating that same repetitious chaining 3, double crochet 3, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1. Now, we just did that. We created our 3rd corner. So we're not going to create a corner here. This is just going to be 3. And a chain 1, and we're on our last corner, okay? So this is our last corner, and the corners are 3 double crochets, a chain 1, and 3 double crochets. So And yours might look smaller or larger depending on what kind of hook you used. It doesn't really matter. And the yarn thickness or thread doesn't matter. It's really up to you. And we're on that last middle. This is not a corner now. And a chain one. And when you chain one, you've got to get back to where? That first crochet that you created. So you're closing up that square. And you've got your square. Now this is a little bit, again, where do you have to start? Well, you have to start in that corner. So we've created that corner, and we have to go back to that corner. And how do we get to that corner? Well, we create what's called an invisible stitch. And this was always hard for me to get when I was first crocheting, because I would say, well, why are we stitching over here? What does that mean? It's not really a stitch. It's working under the first loop like this, back and front loop, and then just slip stitching in the next two, and then slip stitching till you get to that corner. But if you don't do that, you're not in a corner and you're not working the corner. So you have to make sure you're slip stitching, and see, it doesn't look like anything. It's an invisible stitch there, but it just allows you to do what? It allows you to get to that corner. So as you create that corner, you're going to do the 3 double, the space in the 3 double to create a corner. But instead of having 3 here and then another corner, now you have 2 spaces here, right? So these 2 are just going to have 3, and then you're going to do your corner again. So every single time you go around, you're creating your corner with the 3 doubles, the space 3 doubles, and you're going to be adding those extra spaces. So as you're growing your granny square, you're going to have more spaces. So the next time you do the round, you'll have 3 that will just have, and then you'll have 4 spaces, and then you'll have 5, and so on. So let me go ahead and do one more round with you. And if you've got that concept, you can go off on your own. If you don't, you can stay with me for another round. But I've done 3 and a space, and then we're going into the same one, because what are we doing? We're creating a corner, right? So as we've created that corner, we've technically got 6 stitches, and that's what a corner is, the 6 stitches, but you have the space, the 6 double crochet stitches, and the space in the chain 1. So this next one is not a corner. So what will I do with this? I will go ahead and just do 3 double crochets, because it's not a corner. And make sure you add that chain, because that chain is what's going to give you that space in order to come around and add 3 more crochets next time around. This is a great baby blanket pattern, because babies have to have air and aeration to breathe. So this gives them those little spaces, those little crevices in between. So I've done 2, and I have to do a corner now. So finding that single crochet, that chain rather. And what do we have to do in the corner? Well, in the corner we have to do 6 double crochets, but we're doing 3 double, a chain, and then we're doing 3 more doubles. And I'm going to get all the way around with you on this, and then I'll show you what you can do. There's a couple of different ways you can handle this. Now, before I keep going, let me do the chain so I don't forget. Before I keep going, this round middle is nice and secure. And I chained and worked over those chains because it gives it a thickness. Now, some people prefer to use a chain 2 method or a magic circle. I don't like it because it can come loose. So I like this chain. It gives it a heavier, more durable approach to granny squaring, and that's going to be better for me. Again, if you prefer to start this out using a magic chain or something like that, you're welcome to do that. And I'm just going to finish off this round with you. My yarn is a little bit tangled, so that's why I had to stop for a minute. And again, you've got space, so you can, now that you're getting really good at this, you can see where the spaces are. When you first start creating your granny square, it's really hard to see where those gaps are, where you need to put the stitches. So the corners are still a little bit challenging because you have that chain one, and you know you're at a corner because you can see the corner. And again, don't forget, because I used to do this all the time when I'd start out, I just would put the 3 in there and I'd go, oh gosh, that's a corner. So you have to make sure you put 6 double crochets to make the corner. And chain 1, and we're going to get all the way back around, and I'm going to show you some creative things you can do now. Some different approaches to granny squaring it. And my last corner. Make sure you find the right spot. And it's 6 double crochets in the corner with the space in the middle, because again, you need that chain 1 space because you're going to create another corner as you go around. So what do I have here? I have 2 more spaces where I have to have 3 double crochets to finish that off. And I'm going to do that double crochet again. I don't like the way that looked. It wasn't. No matter how experienced you are, sometimes the hooks, they slip or you don't get all the yarn. But the good news about crocheting is that you can just undo it. There's no rush. So I've made it back around, but what do I need to do? Well, there are a lot of different approaches to this. A lot of people will do some chains here to kind of raise this up, but I don't really see the need to do that. I just go into the first crochet that I created again and close that granny square off. Now, you could work the tail back in right here, cut this off, and make more squares like this, and then sew them together. Or you could cut it off, make more squares in different colors like this, and then you can crochet them together. Or you can just keep going. And what I typically do is once I get back to here, I change colors. So again, you can't start your corner here because it doesn't work. So we're going to do some more invisible slip stitches. So we go underneath here, and we're just going to slip stitch over. Nobody's going to know the difference. We're going to slip stitch over again, and we're going to slip stitch over again. So that gets us back to that corner. And again, I'm going to work this in this where I started. So if you're back to the corner, you can either cut this off, or I may start with a different color. So if I wanted to start with a different color, I probably would just go through and pick up the color like this and slip stitch it through. Ta-da! So now I've got my color. I'm going to try to work the tail in, and I have to do what in the corner? I have to create 6 double crochets. And I'm not going to worry about that first crochet because I worked my tail in, and it's all going to work out. It's just when you're working the tail and it looks like you have twice as much yarn, and you do, but it all works out for the best. So I've got my first corner, and I've got a different yarn. And you know what? This yarn is a little heavier than this yarn, but that's okay because I'm just using some scraps. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to keep expanding. So you can see in this row now I've got 1, 2, 3 in here that I've got to put 3 double, 3 double, and then 3 double, and then I'm at a corner again. And the next time you get around, you'll have 4. And the next time you get around, you'll have 5 and 6. And as it expands, your corners will be farther apart. Your granny square will get larger. And you can just continue with that granny square until you get to a point where you put it on your bed and say, voila, love it. It's great. I'm working with that. So there you go, folks. And I hope that you keep crocheting, and I'll see you soon. Take care.